happen.
Well, let's take this to the base. You've got the three words: diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And those appear good in just the natural form, the way that you would view them, but they're operational aspects. So I guess I'm trying to decipher how we, or explain to the audience how we decipher the rhetoric of those three words, or that those three kind of concepts from the operational mode, and how we can do that quickly enough in a moment where we may be, we've both been in trainings at the collegiate level, I'm sure, where it's, you get hit with these kinds of things, and the first time you're hit with them, it's kind of shocking, and often it takes some time to, in your brain, decipher what's happening, and then you can go back, and usually by then you've lost some ground, or at least lost your voice, especially if you're not a person of color, as they would say. So how can we quickly, or what advice would you give to quickly identify what those words are, and versus how they're perceived to how they operate?
I'm going to say something that reiterates, Aristotle, Francis Bacon, John Locke, Kenneth Burke, so many other people. Ask what the definition is. How are they defining these terms? That's the first question you should have. How are they defining these terms? Because they're redefining or resignifying these terms and not telling anybody, because that's another tactic derived from Marxism. I call it dizzying tactics, right? And the efficacy of this was illustrated. Do you ever watch the show Barry on HBO?
Oh yes, yeah.
So a couple of episodes ago, he was like, I want to just scare her, right? So he wants to scare somebody into doing what he wants her to do. So he says, you do little things like replace your dog with a similar looking dog, right? Replace the furniture with slightly bigger furniture so she thinks she's shrinking, right?
Yes.
Just because the more dizzy she is, the easier she is to knock down.
Yeah.
Right. So the more dizzy society is, the easier they are to topple, and that's the whole point: is to topple the current system of things. So how do you do that? You take a word that is common and everybody knows the definition, change the definition, and you don't tell anybody, right? So that when they abide by the original definition, they're bad people, and you point them out as racist, right? And that's dizzying. That's a dizzying effect. If they didn't want to dizzy you, they'd appreciate and have a healthy respect for the concept of an adjective, right? There's racism. Racism can only come from white people. Okay, so it's hegemonic racism. I don't know. It's mainstream racism. It's or traditional racism. I don't know. Have an adjective there.
Yeah.
If you don't want to confuse your audience, the fact that you don't and just change the definition, you're trying to confuse the audience. You're trying to dizzy them, because dizzy people are easier to knock down, right? They do the same thing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, all kinds of different terms.
Yes. First of all, I watched that episode of Barry, and when he said that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's what it is. Because it is. And I see this in teacher trainings, because I've been going through DEI teacher trainings, even here in Red State, Oklahoma. That's where I'm at, where they obviously do the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion, just like you explained, but they also do it with their visuals. So if you're going through slides, they put up slides that appear to be linear, but they're not. And they're out of order, but they look in order. And I think that weaponizes, or that it weaponizes the empathy of teachers, especially. Right?
I was getting to that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and because I think that teachers, first of all, they make their living off their mind and what they know and how smart they are. And if they feel like they don't know something, they will kind of cower in and go, well, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to appear stupid. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And it has, in that vein, do you think, I'm going to go back to what you said about adjectives. So anti-racism, if you think of terms of science, anti and antimatter and matter, it's the same thing, just going both ways. So do you think that these words like that are reclaimable rhetorically? Because the way I look at the word anti-racism now is racism not reverse, but just racism going the other direction. And and so diversity, equity, inclusion, they seem to be landmines. And I've seen a subset of the unwoke crowd that I worked with FAIR, that I think is a great organization. I've worked with many people that think that we can reclaim those words and terms. Do you think that's viable now rhetorically to do that? Or do we have to kind of move in a different direction and then try to reclaim them later?
That's a good question. And if the well has been poisoned, so to speak, already, then maybe we need to get to another well, and use different terms, and let people know, like, I don't know, preface whatever we say with the idea that these terms have been usurped, in the first place, and then move on to other things, like explain yourself, right? We talked about kairos earlier and peristasis. There are similar terms, but the distinction is that with peristasis, you're voicing the kairos. You're talking about the room and the day and the time, right? You're making that explicit. I think we need to be peristatic when it comes to these things. We have to describe what's going on in very vivid ways, and then move into what should be happening, when it comes to race in America.